All right, so we're set for the next panel, as you can see. We will have 4 lovely participants, which will be Catherine Swan, Daniel Tao, Faris Haddad, and Florian Schaudel, who will talk about the future of developer experience with GenAI. And with that said, welcome them on stage.
So, welcome everybody. Good that you make it after the lunch break. I'm always happy to see people, even after such a break, show up. And you won't be disappointed. We have an exciting topic. The future of developer experience and how to drive engineering excellence. So it's not only about experience, it's also about excellence. And this will be an interesting conversation. But before we get there, let me introduce our panelists to us. First of all, Katrin Schwan. Katrin is the lead for data and analytics within Accenture for the German-speaking countries. And she has not only deep expertise from more than 20 years in the industry on data and analytics, but she's responsible for running engagements with the client of actually delivering and coding data and analytics systems. And she will hopefully share her experience from both sides. Next in line, on the very left from your side, it's Daniel Tao. For 10 years, he has been the lead for the engineering of dev tools at Atlassian. And he's just moved into a new role at head of DevOps product engineering, products like Bitbucket and Compass, you might know. Last but not least, and I hope I pronounce your name rightly, Faris Haddad, Data and Insights lead in the consulting COE of AWS. You are responsible for a lot of GenAI POC in the pipeline of AWS. And in that respect, you have helped a lot of world-leading institutions to make use of that stuff and to convert the new opportunities into value. So we are talking today about the future of developer experience. And let's start with the presence. We have seen already a lot happening in the last couple of years. And perhaps we start with you, Daniel, from an Atlassian point of view. What are the most exciting new things that can already be done today, and how does that change the way the tools are used and the support developers have with their work?
Yeah, so can everyone hear me OK? So there's a lot of things that I think a lot of developers are experiencing and using today already with AI. I think the main things are there's code completion, whereas it used to be that you had to write all the code yourself. Now you can just start a line of code, and there are tools that can complete the line for you, complete the next few lines for you. There are full-on code generation tools that allow you to say, hey, write me a function that does this, and the AI can produce the entire set of code. And there's even like sort of optimized chatbots that are meant to sort of interact with the developer in their IDE, where they can say, I'm trying to do this, but I sort of forget how you do it or how you use this library, and the chatbot can sort of, in a natural language conversational interface, answer the developer. And I think this is helping developers in a number of ways. Obviously, one of the main ones is they can simply write more code faster. So that's kind of the obvious one. But there's a couple of more non-obvious ones, too. I think generative AI is already being very useful to developers as sort of a learning tool. So in the same way that students are finding, oh, ChatGPT is helping me learn about a subject, it's sort of answering my questions patiently, and it's sort of catered to exactly what I need to learn. The same is happening for developers, learning APIs, learning libraries a lot faster than they used to be able to. Another thing that I think is a really high impact already and impacting teams is that because the tools are able to let developers produce more code with less effort, there's less emotional attachment to, like, this code took me a long time to write, so I don't ever want to change it. I think there's a lot more freedom that developers are experiencing in terms of, like, oh, it doesn't take me long to sort of put this new idea together because the AI can help me sort of like fill in a lot of the sort of the boilerplate very quickly. And And so I think that allows teams to explore more, be more innovative, try more ideas at lower cost. It sort of reduced the barrier to entry of trying out different implementations of things. So those are already in use today. I think they're being used by a lot of developers, and that's some of the ways that they're benefiting already.
That's really cool, but having the tool is one thing. The question is, how's the tool used in reality? Catherine, if you look at your people, do we already see the impact of that in the way they work, and how does that change?
Yeah. So it actually had a massive impact. Can you guys hear me? All right. So it actually already had a massive impact because this allows a lot for automation, and it also allows a lot more for collaboration and promotes to take more tool stacks on, more also open source. And that means that we need to also change a bit the, let's say, culture of developing as well as the ways of working. So how do you actually collaborate on this new scenario to be impactful, to remain with the observability of what everyone is doing in a team, to make sure it's secure, it's a secure environment, everybody feels ethically also safe with responsible eyes swinging around the corner, it's secure in terms of cybersecurity, and so on and so forth. So this is, I think, some aspects that now come more into play. They have been there before, but they now come much more into play, much more to the foreground, and that actually changes the way on how we think about collaborative development and how we integrate tons of developers. I mean, we used to be like teams of like 10s to 20s working on one thing. Now it's hundreds and sometimes thousands all around the world. So at Accenture, we have over 300,000 developers. And to come to the technical side, that needs to be collaborative so that everybody can learn and profit from these new tools. So what you actually set up is a developer platform, an internal developer platform with observability, with a team that is only on security and making sure that the new tool stacks are up to snap and all that good stuff. So you get a ton of service with this as well that allows for this automation, and also standardization come before that. Then you have the ways of working, the culture, and you also have the golden path, so to say, including the onboarding of new development talent into that pool of developers. And all of that framework, all of these like little bits that come into the developer experience are fairly new to the table.
So that almost sounds too good to be true. You know, we have new tools that automate everything. We have the developer that have a much more fun work. Aren't there any challenges? So what are the current challenges we face with all of that change?
I think with anything new, it's twofold, really. There's the challenges that the developers are facing, which I'll go into in a bit more depth, and there is a challenge of the organization itself, the enterprise, making space for this new way of developing applications and actually understanding the risks and the processes that have to change internally. So if I go to the developers first, so developers, unfortunately, have been thrown so many new aspects that they had to absorb very quickly because they had to. The organization is leaning heavily onto them and saying, oh, you need to be a security expert now, you need to know responsible AI now, you need to understand all this new regulations that are coming through. Like in 2 weeks' time, the new EU regulation is hitting us all. And within 6 months of that, there's so many things you cannot do that were being taken for granted, for example. But then there's the whole tool set. So people are maybe used to MLOps and everything else, but now we've got GenOps, which is it's an adjunct to your normal MLOps pipeline and your normal methodologies. But there's so many new bits in there that you're not ready to experience. And many companies haven't even built that out yet. So they're all just manually trying to cobble things together. Of course, when we work with people like yourself and Accenture, we've heavily leaned into helping them develop this capability very early on. Not just to help their teams, but then they will help the customers themselves to build this out, because the customers have to feel, with the word safe, that not safe that we can actually take things to production, using the best practices, but also really building in all the things that need to happen, which is, how do we assess if something is performing well? How do we choose the right LLM to start with, What are the criteria of success here? And then you have the business-centric view of the world, saying, have I defined the value case well enough to build this out? Because what tends to happen is these developers do incredible work, they build a POC, and then it just stops there because the company is not ready to actually take this on board. So all the foundational pieces that have to be in place, the whole organization has to, not just the dev people, but the organization as a whole has to embrace understanding security and all these kind of things and aspects of this. I could go on and on about this, but there's a lot of building blocks that you have to acclimatize yourself to. And luckily, there is a lot of ready-made stuff. So you look at with AWS, we've got Bedrock, but it has all these things built in. It's got an LLM playground you can investigate. It's got the guardrails for you that really saves everybody a lot of hassle of manually coding these things, and many other things too.
That's actually a good point. You already said there's a lot of ready-made stuff.
Yes.
And if you look around here, I get the impression there's even a lot more to come on ready-made stuff that could help you, but sometimes help is too much help. Daniel, what would be your advice to filter out what are the really helpful tools and the things we should really use, in contrast to all the other interesting stuff that might even derail us from being productive and effective?
Some tips. Well, yeah, I think there's going to be a combination of those things. I think with any AI, like any sort of new type of technology that the world hasn't fully reckoned with yet, there's going to be like really valuable use cases that turn out to actually help people achieve the things they're trying to achieve, and those things will naturally become more popular over time, and more investment will go there. And then there will be many things that people will try, and I think, this morning one of the talks was around that quote that someone put on like Twitter or something that was like, I want my AI to do my laundry and my dishes for me so I can do my art, not for AI to do art and then I just have laundry and dishes to do, right? So I think there are going to be attempts to do the equivalent of like AI can make movies for us, they can make beautiful music for us, they can do all the things that humans like to do, and I think there will be a realization of like, but humans like to do those things, so we don't really need to replace the enjoyable parts of our days. But I think the more that we can find use cases for AI to just eliminate all of the things that we complain about, that's where the sweet spot's going to be. But I think that'll be a process of discovery. It's sort of like let the capitalist engine do its thing, where people will try to sell these products that take away all the fun things, and there won't be much demand for them. And then those companies that are able to produce these AI assistants, these AI frameworks that allow developers to just sort of enter a state of flow and start producing really elegant, beautiful systems and feel like really good and enjoyable, the more those things, I think, will be the ones that will really get adopted and turn out to be truly successful.
That sounds good from a general perspective. Let's look a little bit on the personal perspective of individual developers. Because when you say, I want the automation to do my dishes so that I can focus on the arts, if we look at how a developer typically develops over time by himself, they start to do the dishes and then they become artists over time, after they have learned and went through the hard way. Catherine, what happens to the training of our developers into the real professionals we need if basically the first 2 or 3 years what you do as developer are cut by automation? How do we train them?
That is a very good question, because you have to get your hands dirty with the dishes at some point to be able to do the porcelain art, so to say. To be very frank, automation has not taken over to a degree where we really have to worry about this at all at the moment. What we embrace is the co-creation, the exploration that this allows, and the learning, and then step by step, as you say, discovery, getting rid of things as you go along, documentation, check for compliance, security leak, whatever, and that can be done in a human machine sort of interaction at the moment, because there's always still the human in the loop. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it is in the loop, because we are not so robust yet that we would say, okay, you take it over. So this is something that we need to figure out, to be honest. Where do we draw the line? And it is without question that we need to groom and grow the next generation of developers and educating them. There is no leapfrogging this starting to experience step. there's no leapfrogging that with automation. That's my belief.
If I may jump in, though, I think I would just point out that, once upon a time, someone invented assembly language, and at the time someone was like, well, these engineers are going to have to understand the machine instructions, like, you can't get past that. But eventually, and then someone introduced C, and it's like, but you still need to understand the assembly deep down, otherwise, like, eventually, like, you're going to run into problems where you need to know that. These days, I think there's many very successful, very productive software engineers who don't know assembly language, who don't even know C, who might, the lowest level part of the tech stack they might know is what used to be considered at the very top of the sort of level of abstractions. And so I think, while I don't disagree with anything you said, I just would point out that, what we define as doing the dishes today is going to be it's already very different from what we thought of as doing the dishes 10 years ago, and it's going to be different 10 years from now. So, like, I think there's like an evolution that has to happen where over time, yes, there's an importance to learning the fundamentals, but even how we define the fundamentals gradually sort of stacks up on top of more and more capabilities that are handled very seamlessly for everyone.
And if I just may, talking about this level of abstraction, so there's another whole new thing that's opening up, where in the past, the business tells you what the problem is, chucks it over to you, can you build this for me? So what's happening now is we've got all these capabilities coming out and are out, like App Studio, which really helps line of business people just use natural language processing to tell you what application it needs to build. And it connects to the back-end data, and it builds and deploys it as a production-ready scale application. So that's kind of shifted the whole paradigm, of course. And then you've got these same thing, we've got Q Developer and Q Apps, which the developer themselves can very quickly experiment with without really knowing every single building block of how to build an end-to-end LLM. So I think that helps accelerate the process, because then you can look behind the scenes, you can see how it's constructed it, learn from that really quickly. It's not like those kind of Meccano sets where something is built as something incredible. You want to see the picture overall, think, okay, let me take it apart now and understand the building blocks. So it's a different way of learning, and there's so many more accelerations that you can actually do now. There's so many courses. In fact, there's too many courses. I get it. But I think the way you have to force yourself to learn is not to wait for the business to come to you and ask you about problems. You already know if you're in a business, you already know all the pain points that company has. Lean in, help the business subject matter experts build it up first so they can express it in how they know it should be, and then you can take it from that point and say, right, leave it with me now, I can take this to the next level for you.
If we take this thought to the extreme, isn't there a risk or an opportunity, depending on how you see it, that in 10 years from now we don't need any developers at all because the business people just tell the AI what kind of system they need and it's done? Daniel.
Sure, yeah, so I would give the example of, we were talking about this earlier, how like once upon a time back in, like around the 50s or even 40s, like, physicists, scientists, mathematicians, a big part of what they had to do was just computations, like calculations. Like they came up with theories, they had like lots of formulas, they had to work out the formulas, and then, the calculator wasn't invented. And at the time, I'm sure there were people who were like, oh, do we need all these physicists anymore? I mean, calculators do a lot of the work they do for them. It's like sort of obsoleting a lot of their jobs. And it's like, of course, you fast forward to today, it seems absurd to think that was ever even that significant a part of their role. I think if you look at what software engineers do today, it's easy to think, yeah, they're coders, right? They write code, that's what they do. So if we replace the code, they'll not have a job anymore. That's already not really in touch with reality. I mean, what software engineers do today is like, they write code, they understand requirements, they write documentation, they do a lot of operational work, right? They write configuration, they write, they create dashboards, they create visibility, instrumentation. There's like so many aspects of the job that are not just like writing the functions that do the software features. And so I view it similar to the calculator where like, I don't know what the future holds, whether there will be like where people will always be writing some amount of code or not. But I think that even if you imagine that there's a world where writing code is like completely automated, like anything you can imagine an AI system can still write the code, there's still going to be, it's just going to change our definition of what it means to develop software. It might be like you're not in a text editor writing code so much anymore, but there's still like these very complex systems, and we need people who who have specialized knowledge in understanding how those systems are formed, how to maintain them, how to make changes to them, how to, work with them, right? And that's not going to be, at least I think the more complexity increases, it's never going to be this case that like everybody can totally do all of the things that anyone could possibly need to do. It's like, well, they're going to be really complex, right? Because the tools are going to allow them to become really complex. And so I'm not personally concerned that software engineers are going to like go extinct. I think if you could see a software engineer of the future from 20 years from now, the work they do might be very dissimilar to what we're accustomed to now. In the same way, if a physicist from the 40s looked at a physicist from the current day, they might be like, why aren't they spending any time doing calculations? And it's sort of like, well, that's done for them, but they're tackling much bigger and more complex problems because that is handled for them.
So for many of us, this is reaffirming. There will be software engineers in the future. And there will be a collaboration between the software engineers and the AI. In that transition, how do we make this journey exciting for the people? Because I hear from many of the things, and you use the term, we need the human in the loop. Many people don't want to be stuck in the loop. And many people fear that in the end, they are stuck in a situation where they just have to control whatever the AI is doing, and most of us don't like to be controllers. So what do we do to make this exciting and to orchestrate that human-AI interaction in an interesting way? Perhaps, Katrin, first your thoughts.
I think when we are part of creating that AI, that already makes it exciting. And I also believe that there's still some parts where you say that we'll become more creative. There's the human ingenuity really at play here. And I think this is the part where people will get excited. They will also get excited because some of the dishwashing is going away because of their doing. And I think that will make a lot of people proud because they're on the day-to-day really adding incremental value. So, but to come back to your belief in terms of the job will look different, I truly believe this is also of another thing, because we see a ton of technical debt assembling right now. That technical debt is like, repairs to a house. You love to buy new furniture and stuff and, really kind of fix it with new stuff, but nobody really likes to clean out the cellar, right? So this is the stuff we need to always think side by side. This is why I'm thinking in 20 years from now, that cellar will never have been cleaned up. Like the stuff, the COBOL, all of the old stuff that's still around, where they get people out of retirement to get that fixed. I'm pretty sure we will have that pilot in 20 years from now as well. So I don't believe that software development is going on.
We might create new sellers, new types of sellers.
I'm pretty sure we are all capable of doing that. So.
It's what we do.
And we are not only creating sellers, we have all that exciting tools, we have trained the people, they are doing cool stuff. And we will face a way where junior developers can do things they could have never done before. Everybody is much more empowered and is much more powerful. But we all know, with great power comes great responsibility. So what do we do to also look at the ethical aspect and to make people understand the responsibility and to enable them to handle that responsibility?
Yeah, I think that, again, there's a duality here between what the developer needs to have control over and have visibility on, and what the business or enterprise in general has to sort of ensure that everybody is involved in that conversation. So let's start with the base layer, which is your data foundation in an organization. Data, of course, drives everything. Everyone's saying now we're running out of data to even train the next generation LLMs. So, and also, sometimes there's lots of data which is very sensitive. So you do not want it to get exposed in any way, or somehow to compromise the reputation of the company or anything like that. So there's lots of new areas that are coming. I mean, they've been around for a while, but they're really, really becoming much more mainstream now. So if you look at something like synthetic data, now there's not lots of types of synthetic data, and we've heard about this for years, but this is specifically about creating a digital data twin of your most sensitive information. Tabular data, healthcare life science data, banking transactions data. But by using privacy preserving techniques, you can get a twin of your original data that you can actually then train the models on, using your RAG pipelines, without worrying about if I somebody does a prompt injection or something, it's going to expose some private data. So that's one of the techniques. And then the other idea with data is you really need to understand what's the data, how was the data collected? Who's using it in what way? This, as a developer, because the buck stops with you, really. The business is going to, the compliance officer is going to come to you and say, why did you use that data set? And you might say, I don't know, that's not going to work anymore these days. And again, the idea of the business leaning in as a whole to understand this most important asset, how do we harvest it? How do we secure it in this very loose new world that's opening up? Because we talked about letting the business run loose and create their own applications. Are they ready to understand the sensitivity of data? Do they know the demarcation lines between who should use what in which context? So there's a whole new arena opening up for us. And of course, there's the whole ethics thing and the bias in the algorithmic biases and everything else. So these are, unfortunately, more layers of complexity that as a developer you've got to lean into and absorb and become competent with. But some of the other stuff that the tedious things that we talked about that might be going away will be replaced by these newer, higher thinking and higher stacks, let's call them, which will bring more value to the organization.
So this is all valid question. The question I'm asking myself, how do we make that happen? Catherine, do you have to send our young people to ethics schools rather than to coding schools in the future?
I think the coding school should contain the ethics school because it moves in with an old skill. Like you said, you used to do calculations in your head because there were no calculators. Now you still need to kind of figure out how to do calculations in your head, and you need to know how to use calculators to operate on other calculations. So we would be expanding that, I would say. There's also other stuff, change management, the business side of things, right? Where you actually incorporate the value. It's not something that we would have in a learning program for a software developer necessarily, but maybe it makes some sense going forward, right? How to talk to business people about it, and so on and so forth. So I'm saying, let's embed it. Let's make the coder school a little bit more like, a bouquet of flowers that has not just one kind of flower in it.
That's a good point. So as we are approaching the end, 20 seconds for each of you. And the question is, the single one feature or application or tool you wish to have in 5 years from now, which is not yet here. What is the one that you want to have? And Daniel, we start with you.
Okay, the one feature. Well, I don't know if I can fit it in 20 seconds. I think my imagination might not be big enough. Also, you put me on the spot, so I'll probably have a superior answer in 5 minutes. But for now, I would say I actually like the things that we use AI for now. I just want us to go further. I think the idea of, going from an imagination, like the first time DALL-E came out and it was like, make me an image of this, that was mind-blowing. And I think there's so much more that can be done with that in terms of creating worlds, and it's still tapping into the human creative spirit, but it's like using AI to amplify it and sort of like iterate much faster. So I think that there's just tons of great things that humans will do with the things that we already have, just extrapolated out to much more powerful versions of them.
Thank you. Catherine?
So mine is much shorter. I'm still from a time where you probably read about the way to the galaxy. So I would wish for Babelfish to come true. Like true Babelfish. I don't think we are far away. We are not far away. But that would be, if I see that in my lifetime, put the thing in my ear, it's Babelfish.
You will, I think.
I would love that.
Yeah.
That's my dream. I would love that to come true.
And last but not least, Faris.
I think for me, I can see this happening within a year. So basically, once you've deployed a GenAI application, it's self-aware, it's monitoring itself and looking at the energy consumption, efficiency, how it's running. And it'll automatically, if there's a new chip coming out, like the Graviton 4 we just brought out, which is 60% less environmentally impactful and everything else, it'll refactor itself, redeploy itself onto this whole new architecture, let's say ARM architecture, and just run. Obviously, you'll be aware of that happening, but this is like a self-evolving architecture with a lot less intervention, manual intervention.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for that Q&A, and I hope you got a little bit of an insight how some of the leaders in the industry think about the future of coding, the future of development, and what's ahead of us, also what's the challenges. And talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, big hands for Catherine, Daniel, Faris, and Florian. So if you guys are around, there were some questions, so approach them and ask your questions. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And
everyone.
yeah, have a great rest of the day. Here on this stage, 16:10, so 10 past 4, there will be the next panel on the power of developer communities by Rajiv Rajan, Angie Jones, Scott Hanselman, and Shad Ahmetovic. So stay tuned, we'll be back in some minutes.